My name is Bob. I'm 57 and I live with my wife, Kathy. I've got 2 kids, 5 grandkids, who I adore. I worked for just shy of 40 years, but my pension still wasn't going to be enough for us. So when he called out of the blue, offering a free pension review, I was all ears. He knew me by name, spoke professionally about investments. He even sent a courier over to sign the papers. He seemed a really decent guy. Just shy of 40 years, pension. He took all of it.
Welcome back to Alas, Vine and Hitchens. I am Sarah Vine.
She is.
And Peter, brilliantly, is still Peter. And
fulfilling my role.
Fulfilling your role. In fact, your constitutional role as Peter Hitchens. I wanted to talk about the train attack this week. There has been some talk of introducing airport-style security at train stations. I mean, personally, I think that would be insane and also terribly impractical. And also, it's one attack. It's not as this sort of thing happens a lot. But what I am interested in is the sort of knee-jerk reaction. But I do think there is a problem with bad behaviour on trains and public transport in general. I mean, I was coming back from in fact, funnily enough, on this very train line, I was coming back from doing an event in Yorkshire, and it was a perfectly nice train journey. And then somewhere halfway to London, a group of young men got on, about 7 or 8 of them, and the atmosphere in the train carriage completely changed. They came on, they were one of them was openly dealing drugs on his telephone, openly. I mean, just it was on loudspeaker. He was making arrangements to drop some stuff off, whatever. They were really intimidating. They were playing loud music. They were moving up and down the train. They were sort of sitting next to people for no reason and then getting up and I mean, really unpleasant, really, really unpleasant. And everybody just sort of froze and put up with it. I did that thing of texting the British Transport Police.
Oh, see it, say it.
See it, say it, sorted. Because I thought, well, at least they can...
And then by the time you'd finished keying in your full home address, date of birth, marital status,
and the
you'd arrived at your destination.
Exactly.
And they ignored it anyway.
Well, I was just lucky I didn't get my phone stolen.
What was that?
But you know, people do behave really aggressively and scarily on public transport. Another incident, a few years ago, my daughter was, I don't know why she was, but there was a football game on in London, and she actually got physically attacked. I mean, this is a sort of tiny little 16-year-old by some drunken football person on a tube. And I do think that our public transport system is under-policed. Catastrophically. There's just no presence. There's no sort of sense of authority on any of it. And, you know, maybe we do need to, I'm sure the Sadiq Khan would say that he's just employed 20,000 new transport police people, but I haven't seen any of them. They're not visible at all in any way. And yet, I will just finish my rant in a second. Yesterday, my lovely friend who'd had a really awful day was outside Shepherd's Bush station, and she decided to have a cigarette.
So did you say outside?
Outside Shepherd's Bush station. So she was waiting to go into the station.
So she wasn't in the station?
No, she wasn't. She was sort of, just sort of by the sort of kind of entrance to the station. And she thought she'd have a quick fag. She then had her fag, put the fag out, and was given a £200 fine by a council official.
For what offence?
For putting out a cigarette on the concourse of the station.
She wasn't. You said she was outside the station.
Well, yes, I think she was just standing outside waiting to go into the station, as it were, you know, where the ticket machines are.
It's invalid then, isn't it, if she wasn't in the station?
No, well, apparently not. She argued with him. He said, no, this is my... No, you have to accept this fine. So, you know, we live in a world where people are not safe on trains, and yet they get fined £200 for having a fag. I mean, I know it's annoying. You're not supposed to smoke in stations, and maybe she was just in the wrong. But I don't know. Maybe she got it wrong. She's not English, so maybe she just didn't understand the rule. But the point is, it's the absurdity, isn't it, of a sort of draconian money-making system that is just designed to kind of rake money off people for the council, but the people who need looking after are not looked after.
These are like any other organisation. People are not going to do the difficult jobs unless somebody is in command who makes sure that they do them. And they'll do the easy jobs and all kinds of law enforcement. This obviously wasn't the police. What law enforcement is targeted at those people who are willing to accept punishments, and those who are unwilling to accept punishments and who will respond with violence or
don't get targeted. I mean, as you know,
nothing happens to them, and that's partly because our police forces and our criminal justice system is badly commanded, and people don't do these things. Also, partly because they don't believe in the sort of law enforcement which would actually discourage this kind of behaviour. But airport-style security is a phrase that makes me laugh ever since it was announced about 3 years ago that people entering prison would now be subject to airport-style security. It made me laugh so much when I heard it. That you could arrive in prison and nobody would bother to search you at all. But if you turned up as a wholly innocent person with nothing against your character, you were submitted at airports and have been for years
to humiliating,
punitive, embarrassing, and frankly ludicrous procedure. All of which is rendered unnecessary by the simple method of locking the flight deck door before the plane takes off and not opening it.
Well, I mean,
that's all you need to do.
Every time I go through airport
just
security,
bilge, and they do it on the Eurostar, the trains to Paris and Brussels, which I take quite a lot. And I used to sometimes say to people, "Why are you doing this? There are deep tunnels in Europe. There's a Gotthard-based tunnel, I think. There are tunnels between the islands in Japan, and nobody does this. And what are you expecting to find? And do you think someone's going to march up to the front of the train, bang on the driver's door, open it, point a pistol at them and say, turn this train around, we're going to Warsaw? What is it for? It's a completely futile ritual, as almost all so-called security is, which once it's imposed can never be removed because there is no official, no minister who will ever dare to remove a security restriction.
Yes, we're making it less safe
in case something then goes wrong and they're personally to blame for it. So whenever these things come, it's a ratchet. It goes on and on. It's collective punishment of innocent people for no good purpose.
Well,
and if you had, say you had security at King's Cross, and in Spain they do have, after that awful terrorist attack in Madrid, they do have some sort of, well, last time I was there, some sort of weapons check as you get onto.
Well, they have a lot of men with guns at train stations in Spain.
But if you get onto a Spanish Express train at a major station, you pass through this frankly perfunctory system. You put your stuff through some tunnel, and I have a feeling it's set pretty low, and nothing happens. But if you get on an intermediate station, it's not there.
No.
So if you actually wanted to terrorise a train, you would get on at the intermediate station.
Of course, but they do have. If you go to any country like Italy or Spain, they will have patrols of men with guns and dogs who will at least try as much as they possibly can to sniff out any wrongdoing. The one thing I want to say about airport security, which drives me absolutely insane, is every single time I travel by air, I am molested by a female security officer who cannot seem to understand that the metal in the underwire in my bra is responsible for the machine going off.
This is a fact unknown to all airport security systems.
And it's just,
the first time I ever encountered airport security was in 1977, when the future Mrs. Hitchens and I had won a competition and were travelling by Concorde to Washington, D.C.
Gosh, how exciting.
And they had, on Concorde in 1977, some sort of rudimentary security. And there was this great palaver over the examination of our suitcases. What is this? What is this? What is it? Is it some kind of... And eventually, after about half an hour of inquisition, they said, oh. And guess what it was?
Underwires.
Quite.
In the bra.
In the bra.
Yes, exactly.
But you would have thought that by
either,
now they would have worked it out, but they never get it.
No, and I have a theory that these women enjoy doing it.
It's
because
possible, isn't it?
I think that's
they
what
don't
they
have much fun in
they
their life.
apply to do that job because they like
having...
feeling other women's bosoms. I mean, that's my view.
Well, haven't.
Because they. I mean, the only other option is that you could pass some legislation saying that underwires have to be made out of, I don't know, plastic, recycled plastic.
You can imagine what would happen then, can't you? I mean, it's not.
So yeah,
there'd be the long campaigns. No, ban the plastic bras, and all the oceans would be full of plastic bra remnants.
Turtles drowning.
End up having to have cardboard ones. There's no end to this bilge, is there?
No, there really isn't.
It's completely. I mean, it's as if all the old proverbs you can't slam the door after the horse has bolted. No one's ever heard of them.
Do you remember in the olden days? I know how you like to talk about trains. Do you remember in the olden days trains? I know. You remember in the olden days they used to have separate carriages, like carriages, so you couldn't move between carriages, and then they got rid of those because they were thought to be too dangerous.
Well, if you wanted to murder somebody between, I don't know, Tulse Hill and
Basingstoke,
that's the wrong line,
wrong line.
Somewhere like that, then you could of course get away with it. And if the train was then stopped, as they so often are at red signals, you could then jump down.
I know. So
there was that, and they were pretty alarming for lone travellers. What they also used to have were things called ladies only carriages.
I know. I remember those.
Which I remember they were still on the Liverpool Street line as late as the 60s. And they actually have them now on the Tehran metro.
Right.
And all happens is all the Iranian men gather in the neighbouring.
Allowed to go on the
they gather in the neighbouring carriages and leer at the women through the glass.
Of course they do. Anyway, I don't think there's any point in introducing airport-style security at train stations. I don't think that would work.
If we could only get rid of airport-style security at airports,
just generally, that would be a good
forward. People
start.
Say to me when I moan about, oh, well, you wouldn't want to be on a plane where the security hadn't taken. If there's a plane flying off which hadn't got all these procedures, you wouldn't want to be on it. I said, yes, I would. I absolutely would. It's a chance I'm happy to take rather than having to take my shoes off.
It's always
and my testicles x-rayed and all the other rubbish that they make. But I don't fly anymore.
But also, it's always closing the stable door after the horse has bolted.
Exactly, but nobody knows that proverb anymore.
Nobody's going to
knows what a stable is, and very few people, I think, know what a horse is.
They'll find a different way of getting around it. But I would...
Of all the stupid responses that you might have to that event, that has to be the gold medal Olympic stupidity winner.
What we need...
Airport-style security.
Airport-style
security. They can have it in prisons. That's fine by me. They've got all the time in the world.
Anyway, do let us know what you think. alas@mailonline.co.uk. Should we do some letters?
Yeah.
Can I have another rant about a thing before we do some letters?
You can do anything you like. You're in charge.
So I just want to have a rant about Hammersmith and Fulham's new parking permit arrangements. So I had a perfectly reasonable situation. There used to be a nice man in an office, and what you did was you sent him your forms.
Come on, this is a bit like complaining about the merchandising.
No, I want to complain about this. I do want to complain about this. It's very important that I have...
I don't think it's going to ring a bell
that I
with
get
most
this.
of our listeners.
No, this is a wider issue. It's about the computerization of systems that work perfectly well when humans are in charge of it. So Hammersmith and Fulham have obviously paid some absurd AI company somewhere in, I don't know, Ulaanbaatar to come up with a portal. The dread words. We have a new portal. So now there is a portal. There is a parking portal, which you have to do in order to get your parking permit renewed. And it simply does not work. It literally is unworkable.
Are you listening, Hammersmith and Fulham Borough Council?
Also, I've emailed 73,000 times.
I bet you have no contact at all with the outside world.
Because it's run by a computer. Yeah. This is what the world is going to be like as more and more AI computer nonsense takes over things that, I mean, what's wrong with having a man or a lady or a non-binary person or whatever you want to do, sitting in an office going, yes, that person clearly has the right address on their license. Let's give them a parking permit.
What was that wonderful film where the rich and powerful lived on a special satellite just off Earth and everybody else continued to live? It wasn't called Utopia. It was something like that.
Elysium.
And the people living on Earth, their contact with authority was a machine, a sort of tin can machine with a pseudo-human face. And it would listen to your complaints, and then it would say, you want a pill? And spit out an antidepressant.
Maybe that's what I need.
And then if you continue to complain, an arm would shoot out with a truncheon on it and hit you over the...
Okay, maybe,
it's a brilliant,
maybe that's what
a really brilliant
to
film.
do.
From that moment alone was worth the price of entry.
Maybe I just need to take a pill.
This is the future.
I just need to take
Become
a pill.
incredibly rich and powerful.
Either take a pill or get very drunk.
Then someone else can sort out your party.
But then they wonder why people turn up at the council offices in a sort of rage.
They don't wonder at all. That's why you can't get into the council offices. Or if you do, there's nobody there.
Do they have airport-style security there?
To keep you out, they do.
To keep out angry. Anyway, and don't say I shouldn't have a car.
I've been
you were thinking it.
So careful not to say it.
You were thinking it. Okay, here's a letter.
Yes, but I didn't say
Sorry
it.
about that. Okay, no, yes.
Self-discipline
Okay, you can
on this programme is at a very high level.
Very high level, yes.
Nobody realises it.
Dear Peter and Sarah, I could not agree with you more strongly about the depressing quality of much of contemporary architecture. I am reminded of a conversation with a successful architect who was criticising a modern Georgian-style building that most of us thought was refreshingly beautiful and sat sympathetically with surrounding buildings. When asked what he thought was wrong with it, his patronising response was, "You're not an architect. You wouldn't understand." That is such an architect thing to say. I remember having a conversation years ago with an architect, actually, and admiring a building that was a very simple, and he said almost exactly the same thing. And he said it was just basic of me to like that building, apparently. Anyway, this is Nick. I suspect this attitude is not unique and demonstrates the chasm in taste and understanding of the purpose of new buildings that lies between the wider general public and the narrow, evidently sometimes superior view of our architectural brethren.
Yes, it reminds me slightly of the famous incident where the late Peter Jay was the economics editor of the Times and had written an article, and one of the sub-editors had found it a bit incomprehensible and had changed it slightly. And Jay, when he saw this the following morning, stormed in, demanded to be taken to see the sub-editor involved, said, "You changed what I wrote. You changed what you're not allowed to." The man said, "Well, I'm afraid it didn't make sense." He said, "That sentence was written for 3 people, and you're not one of them." And it often feels to me as if buildings are built for 3 people, and you're not one of them.
No, they're all strange architects.
Yeah. They do have those funny spectacles, don't they?
They always have funny spectacles.
They do, and strange colour schemes.
And they like things like light wells. No one ever needs a light well. What's the point of a light well?
Well, it can't be a light well. You can't lower a bucket into it and draw light out of it.
Light wells.
It's just a fancy name for a hole.
And then they like very big doors that don't ever shut properly.
That was a feature of the Soviet Union. All the major buildings had about 100 doors.
Why can't you have one door?
I don't know, but only one of them will open.
Exactly.
You had to range along, find the one.
No, I mean, I think the curse of modern, just not grand architecture, but modern sort of domestic architecture is the open plan space.
Yes.
I can't stand an open plan space. I love a room. I love a small room that no one else can come into because I can be in it on my own. Otherwise, it's just annoying.
Yes, but I'm afraid it's bad for global warming, I'm afraid, Sarah. So
open plan spaces are good for global warming. No, they must be terrible for global warming.
Yeah.
Anyway, dear Alas, given that he has lived in Russia, I would like to ask Peter what he makes of the argument being put forward that Russia is on the precipice of a collapse as a result of the war in Ukraine. While it may be true that corruption has gutted the Russian military, looking at history, I think one of the most obvious lessons of the 20th century is that grit and resilience of the Russian people should not be underestimated.
The last part is absolutely true. Sorry, this is from Odrin Gallagher. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Okay.
I think the last part is absolutely true. The life of Russians is immensely more demanding and tough and austere than most of us could imagine. And when I lived there, the friends and colleagues of mine who were Russian tended to look. We used to think that they looked 10 or 15 years older than they were. And they all thought that we looked 10 or 15 years younger than we were. They just go through so much. And it is true, they will put up with a lot, and they have to. Doesn't mean, I have to say, that there isn't a serious problem with the Russian economy. unlike, say, Poland, which was quite rightly, after the end of the Cold War, showered with Western money and investment and advice to build what has turned into one of the most successful modern economies in the world. Russia was subjected instead to a totally different system of pirate capitalism, which tore it to pieces and made it very, very hard indeed to rebuild. It hasn't got much. If it didn't have oil, it wouldn't have anything, oil and gas. It hasn't got much except apart from those and the quite well-developed military industries that it had. And as I say, the resources of a very resilient population. Though the growth rate of the population is too low to sustain. It is also the case in the West.
More young men have died
here.
now.
I mean, it's a tragic place, and it's also appallingly corrupt. I should say, if there were an Olympics in corruption, then Russia and Ukraine would tussle.
Would they? Yeah.
They're both of them fantastically corrupt because they both the Soviet system, which gives power to petty officials, creates corruption because there's no scrutiny. There's no free press to expose it, and therefore it just became endemic. Anything you needed to do when I lived in the Soviet Union, any importance, required some sort of corruption.
I mean, Italy used to be like that. You had
Isn't it still?
You always had to buy someone a coffee. Yes, but it was quite fluid. You could generally get through it.
I mean, I read Donna Leon's rather good detective stories about Venice, and they're full. And she's obviously very observant about the city. I think she used to live there. She's moved to Switzerland now, but they're full of enormous amounts of detail of the forms of corruption takes, particularly in Venice, where it's very difficult to get planning permission to change buildings and things like that. And it's difficult if you don't have money, but it's very easy if you do. And every single aspect of life, she details there, is very corrupt.
Every single aspect.
It has the ring of truth to me, the way she writes it.
No, you can't do anything. You can't do anything in Italy unless you are prepared to grease some palms.
But it is huge weakness.
But also the thing about the Russians, I think, I don't know if this is true, and you'll tell me, is I think that people who have very little to lose are often quite dangerously resilient. And if you look at the difference between a country like ours, where most people would have a lot to lose if their lives were changed, but if you're used to hardship and you don't have an awful lot to lose, then you are a much more formidable kind of adversary. True.
Also, Russia's culture is the result of being in a dangerous part of the world with very weak natural defences. They're not protected by any sea or desert or mountain range. They're there because they have been prepared very violently to defend themselves over and over again. Very few people in this country have any idea what the Russian people went through during the part of the Second World War their country took part in. It's almost unbelievable to people when they discover what happened and the brutality which was endured, and which was then given back in quite large quantities when the Red Army reached Germany.
Yeah.
It is a society capable of extreme violence.
Yeah.
And a great deal of austerity.
It's
It
also
would
quite a
be foolish to imagine you could overcome it easily, as I think some people have thought. But what a pity that we didn't do as we did to Poland and use all our resources to bring Russia back into the comity of civilized nations, which I think could have been done. That's one of the great tragedies of my lifetime, which I saw happen and could see at the time it was wrong.
I have a couple of Russian friends, and I remember one of them, Igor, turned up uninvited to my wedding. And arrived with a big bunch of lilies and lots of dollars. It was a very Russian moment. They're quite sort of passionate and rather superstitious people.
They always laughed at when the film, the David Lean film Dr. Zhivago, was eventually shown in Russia. Russians hooted with laughter at the non-expressiveness of the characters when they hugged each other. They didn't do it properly. No. There was this very powerful, when it's released, emotion in Russia, which was simply not portrayed.
And it's really, I think it's just really fundamental to the Russian character. That sort of, there's just so effusively emotional and sort of sentimental, really sentimental.
Well, sentimentality is the reverse of the medal of cruelty, I find.
Dear Sarah and Peter, I have lost my love for reading history. Since the pandemic, I have not read a singular book of history, not one. I know I need to fix this. Can you recommend a few books on history or biographies that can rekindle my hope and love for history? I'm in danger of never going back, and I need to change this. Kind regards, Eric Keane. I don't know. I think Simon Sebag Montefiore's history books are quite good. I quite enjoy them.
I'm
They're
sorry,
very
I
readable.
haven't read them.
He's written a very good book on Jerusalem. He also did a history of the world, which is extraordinary when you think about it, but it is a very, very readable book. It depends what sort of history you want. If you want sort of very detailed history, then I'm probably not the person to ask. I mean, I like Gombrich's history is also a very good sort of starter history, but it sounds like Eric does enjoy proper history.
Well, I'd start at the absolute foundation and read Macaulay's History of England. It isn't really a history of England. It's a history mainly of the period of the Glorious Revolution, the overthrow of James II, and the coming of the wholly new constitution which we've lived under ever since. It is magnificently written, and there are abridged versions if you want them. I've first read an abridged version, I think abridged by Hugh Trevor Roper, and then I read the full thing. It's magnificent, and it's like all good historians. Macaulay's a man of passion, and he's not fair to people, and you mustn't take it as being gospel.
No.
In the best of the modern historians has to be A.J.P. Taylor, Alan Taylor. His Oxford History of Britain from in the 20th century is fantastic. A man I disagree with greatly, but on the other hand could really write, Eric Hobsbawm, who was a communist fellow traveller, wrote some very good books about the 20th century. Whether this is history or not, I'm not sure. But if you want to read a really gripping account of what it was like to be in France during the collapse of the country in 1940, a book called Scum of the Earth by Arthur Koestle is pretty good. And also in terms of American history, but expressed as a novel, one of the best books ever written, All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, which is actually about the governor of Louisiana, Huey P. Long, who very nearly became an American dictator in the 1930s, and the brilliant understanding of the temptations of people such as Huey Long, who was a clever, witty, cunning man with actually some quite honourable acts to his credit, but who became a fantastic, corrupt monster and Dangers of Freedom, and it's a brilliant book. And then in terms of there were a lot of about 10 years ago, a lot of centenary of the First World War books, most of which were frankly not worth the bother, but the one which is called The Deluge, and it's by Adam Tooze, Tooze. And it's what I described at the time as brilliant mountaineer history. It's things you never knew, brilliantly described with a really fluent pen and mind. And everybody should read it anyway. But if you like history,
it depends what you like in history. What for you makes a good history book? I mean,
narrative. It has to be a coherent narrative and understanding, even if the understanding may turn out to be wrong, which I don't think in Taylor's case or Macaulay's case is fundamentally true, or in Tooze's case. But it's the narrative of these events and the enormous scale of them. And another one, if you're interested in that sort of thing at all, again, it's totally party pre and utterly biased as it would be, is Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution, which is, I think, the best history of the Russian Revolution because it's written from the point of view of somebody who took part in it and made it happen, but who was also, whatever else you say about him, a brilliant journalist and writer. Find people who can write.
Yes.
There's a man called... what's his name escapes me, who writes very boring histories, but he wrote one of Stalingrad, which it seemed to me to be almost totally pointless. Everyone raved about it. If you buy Alan Clark's Barbarossa,
okay,
Alan Clark was a really naughty man, as we all know, but in his book Barbarossa, his account of the Battle of Stalingrad in probably 40 or 50 pages, hugely outmatches any full-scale book because it is so brilliantly written as a narrative, and he understands it, and he's moved by it. If you're not moved by history, you can't write it, in my view.
The one that I like is a sort of, which is what I always give to godchildren and sort of, children in general, is Gombrich's A Little History of the World, which actually was, I'm just reading about it, wasn't translated into English until 2005. I think he was German. Ernst Gombrich sounds pretty German. No, Vienna Austrian, but it's very good. It's really accessible. It's well written. It makes sense. That's what I would recommend. But that's I think that's probably it might just be for younger people. Have you ever read Simon Sebag Montefiore's Young Stalin book?
I'm afraid not.
No, you might enjoy that.
I might.
It's good. If you'd like to be involved, please email us, alas@mailonline.co.uk. Do send us your book suggestions or viewing suggestions. And if you can also leave a comment on Spotify, or you can send us a voice note on WhatsApp, that's 07796 657 512. And you could start your message with the word alas. Please. Thank you for listening.
Selling your car can be super simple if you choose We Buy Any Car instead of a confusing part exchange. Because with We Buy Any Car, you'll have cash in the bank for more bargaining power on your next car. If only they could make getting to that countryside wedding simpler.
Make a U-turn. Make a U-turn.
Oh no. We Buy Any Car. Selling made simple. To get a quote in 30 seconds, enter your reg number now at webuyanycar.com.
It's time to celebrate. No, not New Year. It's DFS winter sale time.
Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your booty.
With savings on a huge range of stylish sofas and beds, plus 4 years interest-free credit on everything. Let your bum find its thing in the DFS winter sale. Shake on down to a store near you. DFS, what's your thing?
College degrees are important. I mean, you wouldn't go to an amateur vet or a self-taught dentist. Ugh. But for lots of jobs, experience and talent are even more relevant. Which is why your Indeed profile allows you to showcase your skills and experience as much as your qualifications, helping you flex your practical skills for employers to see and match with, leaving everyone smiling. Download the Indeed app and start making the world work better for you today.